morning, Prof.
Good morning, Ndebele.
Yes, morning, Prof. We just needed, or we want to hear from you. What have been? I know you are on in the dungeon somewhere, but you've been following on Twitter. But what does the law say in terms of voter inspection and what are your observations so far?
Thank you. And as usual, we appreciate, especially some of us in the dungeon sites, coverage of these issues. In this case, my take briefly, Ndebele, is as follows. Obviously, this is a provisional voters' roll that we are looking at. And it's important for people to understand that while the emphasis is on inspection, the fact of the matter is, in terms of the Electoral Act, Section 21, voter inspection is the same as voter registration in the sense that it is a continuous process. You don't have to wait for a particular window like now to inspect the voter's roll as a registered voter to find out that you are registered and your details are captured correctly. And we have to flag that out because political parties like jumping up and down when there's a particular focus on an aspect of voters or voter registration, as the case may be, when in fact the law is clear, these things are done at any time, that is registration and voter inspection, and political parties should go to various registration centers with their members, come up with a strategy to check these things. That's the first thing. But the ZEC is required by law to produce a provisional voters' roll for an election that is coming up. And in this case, it's the August election. And ZEC has to be very transparent and efficient in doing so. In terms of this current situation at the moment, we have two problems, in my humble opinion. One, the noise that is being made about anomalies is completely unjustified. I read this morning the main story in Newsday about this issue, and it's quite interesting that the story says there are major anomalies with the inspection exercise because many people, including prominent people like yourself and Ndebele, could not locate their names or found that they'd been put somewhere else and so forth. There's no information suggesting that ZEC is refusing to correct anomalies. The fact that people don't find their names or find that they've been moved to some other polling station surely is not an anomaly, it's not a crisis, especially when the voter inspection is coming either after a new voters' roll, as happened in 2018, where there was a new voters' roll because of BVR registration, or when the inspection is coming after a delimitation exercise, as is the case now, the first delimitation exercise in 16 years. The voters' roll for the delimitation exercise closed exactly a year ago, Ndebele, on 30 May 2022. And then there's been continuous registration happening. And while we know that there were not many changes in terms of the number of constituencies per province and so forth, there were massive changes in the boundaries, constituency and ward boundaries. The delimitation exercise is specifically to deal with boundaries because of changes that happened in a decade or so. This one, that was gazetted on 20 February this year had major changes. And these changes naturally affect the location and names of polling stations. And it's not, there's no one should expect to a Nobel Prize for telling us that they are no longer in the polling station they were in and so forth. It stands to reason because boundaries have changed. Now, the problem is that ZEC did not have voter awareness to tell voters properly that a major inspection exercise is coming and expect ABC because of the delimitation or whatever appropriate information they would have deemed necessary to give voters. They didn't do that. It came as an ambush. And secondly, the time they've given to the exercise of 5 days, it smacks of a sinister agenda when you are dealing with a major exercise following a delimitation process. In 2018, the inspection for the provisional voters roll was for about 10 days. It was from 19 May 2018 to 29 May 2018. This one is about half of that period, and yet there's been a major delimitation exercise. ZEC should be faulted for that. It was not correct for ZEC to do that. Otherwise, this impression that was given on Twitter, and I'm glad, Ndebele, just to conclude my preliminary remarks, you've made an important point to say, whereas especially C people, the prominent ones, MPs and so forth, when they found these so-called anomalies, rather than going to their structures to deal with this and to be systematic, to see what's happening across the country and so forth, and have a clear idea of what's happening, they rushed to Twitter to allege that there is some rigging going on and so forth, because their names, if their names as prominent people are not there, how about the less prominent people? Which is a preposterous thing. Everyone is equal when it comes to the voters' roll. There is no prominent person on the voters' roll. They are just registered voters, and they are in their millions. And it was absurd for people to start running to Twitter and saying, "Oh, because my name is not there, therefore there's some, it was showing that they are not well organized. Because, quite frankly, if the media were to do its job properly, they will find that many ZANU-PF people did not find their names. But where did they go? They went to the structures, as you said, in the bill, and that's exactly what happened. And then they complain or raise these issues with ZEC in an organized fashion. I think my last point is, we will be in a better position to know whether this is really a major mess up on the basis of how ZEC reacts to the anomalies that are identified. And people should understand they are identifying or confirming their registration in order to enable ZEC to come up with the final voters' roll that will be used in the election. This process should leave us with a better understanding of the state of the provisional voters' roll. And we can see that it appears like ZEC has maybe 4 versions. They don't have one clear provisional voters' roll. And it's clear that ZEC has a huge technical problem in producing just one voters' roll, so that even when you are correcting an anomaly because your name or the location of your polling station is not correct, you can't be sure that at the end of the day, when the exercise is done, we will have what we all can identify as one provisional voters' roll, and that provisional voters' roll will then be clear 2 days after the proclamation of the election. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof, for those remarks. And I think, I agree with you with some of the points in terms of, especially when you're talking about the number probably of the provisional voters roll. Because I was tweeting with exactly who's the IT guy at ZEC, and you get a feeling that someone goes to the polling station, they don't find their name. They go to the 265, they don't find their name. They go to the ZEC offices, then they say, yeah, your name is there somewhere there. So there could be a number, or definitely there are different versions of the voters roll that are there. And also looking at that, they've extended it for just a day. I'm yet to find my name. From here, from the Twitter space, and the chaos that I saw at ZEC yesterday is likely to discourage me to go back, because it's crowded. There are a lot of people there. But Prof, he brings in different issues, interesting ones as well, legal issues according to, I was actually reading where it says that electoral act, you're allowed to go in anytime.
Yes.
To inspect the voters roll. And after having paid the gazetted fee, you can actually get the voters roll. But we know people have been failing to get the voters roll. And probably this explains why ZEC has not been able to give the voters roll, because they don't have one voters roll. But it was 2018,
it's something else, Senzele. And to think that in my case, I had moved my name. So I used the *265# to check that my name was moved. That was before, I think, a month ago or so. And it was there. But now when I use the *265#, my name is not there. And I wonder if that is the case with someone who actually went there physically during this time that the Prof was talking about, to say anytime you can actually go and check. I wonder if people who actually took time to do that found their names then and are not finding their names now. So it's quite something else. But maybe to bring back the Prof into the discussion, I would like to ask Prof to say, you also said that in 2018 there were issues of these anomalies were also there. But I would like to ask to say, this time with this day that we have been given and all this chaos that is happening, do you think it's enough? Is it going to work?
Well, ZEC has a constitutional obligation to make it work, but as I indicated earlier, it is really right up front unfair, and I would say wrong, for ZEC to allocate 5 days for this formal inspection process, because ZEC knows only too well that its delimitation exercise changed radically and dramatically, in some cases, the constituency and ward boundaries. And although there is no connection between the delimitation exercise and the creation of polling stations, the delimitation exercise has consequences on the boundaries which affect the polling stations. And ZEC should have been alive to that consequence, and not only given enough time, but also alerted people, advised people. The point that there is ignorance of the electoral process in Zimbabwe, which point should be blamed not just on ZEC, but on political parties as well, is a very serious one. So rather than people jumping up and down and tweeting about their names and not being there and so forth, I think it would be advisable to have a shared view about the minimum time required for this exercise. It is true that an election is a voter's roll, and if the provision of voters' roll raises dust and there's a strong national feeling that it is not credible because either names are missing or people don't know which polling stations they are registered under, then there will not be a free and fair election. For that reason, maybe there should be a more organized discussion, engagement between principally the political parties, but those civic organizations or NGOs that are involved in this area to have an extension. Frankly, the idea that ZEC has extended this to the 1st of June doesn't make any sense because at least 2 or 3 days have already been lost, totally lost. So ZEC should not pretend that some good things have been happening up to this point, but there is a need for more time for those good things to continue happening. The fact is nothing of value has happened. The exercise has had a false start, which has compromised it. It doesn't require, in my humble opinion, an extension. It requires a redo. Now that everyone is alert, understands the importance of this, no one will die if ZEC actually comes up and says, we are starting the voter inspection exercise afresh from the 1st of June to the 6th of June. Nobody will die. It would be a good public service, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Jonathan Moyo, and welcome to those who have just joined us. Today we are talking about the voters' roll inspection, the anomalies and everything that is going on there with the voters' roll inspection. I see we've been joined by ZAPO spokesperson Sondlovu. Good morning, sir. I would like to ask you, Baba Ndlovu, what has been ZAPO's experience with the voters' roll inspection in terms of your supporters on the ground and everything else that has been ongoing?
Good morning, Site. Good morning to fellow presenters and listeners. Our experience as ZAPO, especially in the cities, has been that of total confusion and total carnage in some instances, where majority of our people that have gone to inspect their names have either found them missing or allocated to different polling stations. But it is quite helpful, the presentation by Professor Jonathan Moyo, who clearly points out that this could have been a result of the just ended delimitation exercise, which could have changed boundaries. But as political parties, some of us cannot be faulted for smelling a rat, especially after imbibing on the Excel gate that was written by the learned professor, where ZEC was accused number one, if not the only accused. So yes, I think we accept the blame for not having done much, like Professor Moyo is alleging, in terms of playing our role to conscientize our members to expect this anomaly. And we also take the blame for reacting in the manner we have reacted and suspecting that ZEC is colluding, that ZEC is in a political incestuous relation with the ZANU-PF. But also equally important is the fact that the professor clearly mentions that whilst the delimitation process and the period of inspection of provisional voters roll is they've given people a very limited period to do so. We believe that there is a system in the madness. We believe that there is a possibility that the whole process of delimitation and the whole idea behind 5 days of inspection could be mischief between ZEC and ZANU-PF in order to disenfranchise voters, especially the newly registered voters, and discourage them from inspecting and indeed voting. This whole carnage with regards to the preliminary voters roll that we have been favored with is politically wrong in the sense that it was going to discourage people from voting and differentiate a lot of new voters. Be that as it may, I think the professor also raises a very critical issue that we have now a responsibility to come together as political parties and civic society and have an engagement with ZEC and an engagement with all stakeholders in order to extend or restart this process and give everyone a chance to get an opportunity to vote. But this chaos, this carnage, is also reflective of our inability to run or manage anything sensible as a people. And it reflects very badly on those that are presiding over state affairs. Because I do not imagine any other country where we have a document as voters' roll creating so much chaos and carnage amongst people and anxiety amongst people. This is not acceptable. We should be able to have systems and produce a voters' roll that satisfies everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Msondlovu. That was Msondlovu, the spokesperson for ZAPU. Thank you so much for your contribution and for sharing your thoughts and experiences as a party on this issue. I see we've also been joined by Elizabeth Valerio, the president of United Zimbabwe Alliance. Good morning, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You are also audible. I just want to ask you as UZA to say, what are your experiences as well as your party, and what do you have to say about these anomalies?
Well, in terms of the experience of our party, we've really experienced very much the same as what has been spoken about in a lot of the forums, what our leader from ZAPU has also mentioned. There is a lot of anxiety building amongst our members throughout the nation because there is mass confusion at this point about how this election is going to proceed. It began with the delimitation process. I think we've all had many discussions about the anomalies that came forward through this delimitation process. As we sit here today as a political party, we still do not have a map that clearly defines the boundaries. Many of the changes that were made in the constituencies, yes, they were documented and there were wards listed, but within a document, but we do not till today know where some of our members are going to be voting. So as the United Zimbabwe Alliance, we have been very proactive. We created our own database many months ago, 20 months ago. We track every member, where they are located, and all of the details about their registration. Today, as we sit, we have contacted ZEC multiple times about members in particular wards. And I'm going to mention, for example, Ward 45 of Harare East, which no longer exists. And we have members that are registered with ZEC who do not know where they are going to be voting because the delimitation process did not address this. We have today a large number of individuals who are saying they did see their records on the Star 265 verification system, that they are not finding their names on the voters roll. So to the Honourable Professor Moyo, I did hear his remarks, and thank you for bringing sanity to the issue, but I do think that these anomalies are unjustifiable. I think that as we go towards elections, we need to make sure that we do not lose the trust of the citizens. We need to give them the freedom to vote with confidence, and we are losing that through this massively chaotic election process. The mandate of ZEC, if we need to remind them, is that they have a mandate to educate the public, to ensure that they know what the boundaries are, to ensure that there is no confusion. And as we sit here today, a political party that is going to be contesting broadly in the 2023 elections, our members, our citizens do not know where they're going to vote. And that is my submission.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. That was Elizabeth Valerio, the president for UZA. I think let's bring back Professor Jonathan Moyo into the discussion, maybe to first respond to what spokesperson and Madam President said. Over to you, Prof.
No, I really don't have a response to what the colleagues from the political parties have said, other than to take note of those sentiments. And as a matter of fact, as they were speaking, I did not find myself with any problem what they were talking about. And I think it's good that they've put their views for our understanding. And in any event, I'm not here to respond to these things as if I'm speaking for ZEC. You know, it would have been useful if this platform had also invited someone from ZEC, but unfortunately, as we all know, they would normally not take advantage of such opportunities. However, that said, we should not lose sight of the fact that the reason or purpose for this particular voter registration inspection, as opposed to the continuous process of inspection that is provided under Section 21 of the Electoral Act, is designed to enable registered voters themselves to audit the provisional voters roll for the forthcoming election. It is to enable registered voters to audit the voters roll. And when registered voters audit the voters roll and find anomalies, there is no cause, as if you have found something unbelievable and so forth, because that is precisely what the process is enabling you to do. Go and find out if your details are captured correctly, including the name and location of your polling station. If you find that they are not captured correctly, or they are not captured at all, when you are in fact registered, then let us know so that we correct it. That is what the process is intended to do. For people to say, we expect this audit to find no anomalies is not fair. What would be fair is to say, we have found anomalies, informed ZEC, and ZEC is telling us to go to hell. Then that will be outrageous, unacceptable, and warrant more than just making noise. So I'm happy that the leaders from the political parties who are with us here have referred to problems like we heard about 45 in Harare, which have affected not this or that person, but registered voters there of the kind precisely that need to be reported to ZEC. But none of the leaders here said that they've made representations and they've been told to go away. I think whether within the remaining period up to the 1st of June, or hopefully ZEC becomes a little bit more legalistic or humane and is persuaded in its language to extend the process, or even for it to win the confidence and trust of registered voters. If ZEC, and certainly if I were ZEC, I would say, listen, we have had this outcry and these representations from various stakeholders, and we are persuaded that we should restart the process for 5 days. Whatever they do, whether restart or extension. You see, when they extended by 1 day last night, they did it as if they are doing some people a favor, that they are good, or so. Yeah, we've extended by another day. When in point of fact, they themselves had already made public statements to the effect that certain centers are facing technical challenges and logistical problems. ZEC itself told the nation that. You can't tell the nation in the middle of the process that some of your centers are not opening on time or opening at all due to technical problems and or logistical problems, and then appear to be giving people a favor by ambushing them at night to extend. When this discussion started, some people were not aware that it has been extended by a day to end on the 3rd, rather on the 1st of June and not tomorrow. So if ZEC can take responsibility for the failure of its centers, we don't know how many of these centers, because they are, unfortunately, although the law allows observers in this process, we are not getting reports from observers who are at the various centers reporting what's going on. Ndebele said earlier that when he went to a particular polling station, he found it had a lot of people queuing to register to vote. ZEC distinguished and identified the inspection centers separate from voting centers. And people should be going to inspection centers, not to centers where people are voting to look for their names. But I understand if they did not find their names, they maybe thought, let me go to any polling station and so forth. And they were causing problems because then you get congestion and the people, the ZEC officials who are at polling stations where there's voting are really not supposed to be distracted by this thing. But the essence of what I'm proposing here is that ZEC should take responsibility, because ZEC was honest enough to say it experienced major problems at a number of unnamed centers, but enough number to cause them to extend. But they now should factor that along with this feedback that is coming from across the country. And ZEC knows very well that although ZANU-PF members are not making noise in public forums. They are making noise in their structures, and surely one doesn't have to be a rocket scientist to know or assume or guess that ZANU-PF officials are engaging ZEC over the fact that their members are not finding their names in the provision of voters' roll. They should factor this information and extend in a more meaningful way during the day, not at night, and extend by a meaningful number of days. And 5 days will be okay, and give people sufficient notice so that people can go and inspect the voters' roll. And my last plea is, this is an audit by not just citizens, but registered voters. And it's done to enable them to identify anomalies. And there is no good cause. And certainly it is not rational to find anomalies and start making noise because you have found an anomaly. If you find an anomaly, report it to ZEC, expect that it gets addressed, and if it is not addressed, make the noise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that. I hope that something's also going to be done, like the recommendations that you stated earlier. And also, I really hope that Zimbabweans are going to stand up and go and also do something if there are anomalies in terms of their registrations as well. I see we've been joined by Jagulo. Good morning, Jagulo. Please share what are your experiences as are you a registered voter, and what has been your experience? And please, let's be brief. You see, our time is running up, and let's stick to the topic. Please do go ahead, Jagulo.
Oh, good morning. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm a registered voter, but unfortunately, because of where I am currently, I could make my change to go back home and check if I'm still there. But I am a registered voter. But I came up here, with regards to say the way the Prof has presented the opposition as a villain, to say they went out to Twitter and they posted the anomalies and started crying on Twitter. Yet ZANU-PF went to the south. How do you know how the opposition communicates with its people? Where are the cells of the opposition if some of us are always here on Twitter because we are outside of Zimbabwe? So our leaders have always communicated through to us, through Twitter, and any information that is happening in Zimbabwe. So I feel you are trying to silence their voices so that they are not able to communicate with people like us that are outside of Zimbabwe. What was the best mode of communicating with someone like me so that they alert me and make me know of the anomalies that are happening in Zimbabwe about the voters registration and the opposition has always communicated with some of its people. And the second thing is, we as the voters, we shouldn't even get where we are questioning the abilities of ZEC. Yet we are coming to a crucial moment like this one, where voters go in and they don't find their names. Why are we like that? And how do we continue to trust that ZEC is going to facilitate a credible election for us when they are failing to just keep our names on the voters roll? Just keeping my name. I gave you my name. I gave you where I stay. Just keep it there and make sure when I come to vote, my name is there. They have failed to do that. How are we going to trust them that they are able to proceed on with elections in a proper manner?
institutes have failed to present the proper and to carry themselves worthy of the money, of the taxpayers' money that they are being given, so that the ZEC has only one job.
Okay,
They have no many jobs.
Jabulo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Njabulo. Remember, I had said let's be brief. Thank you so much for sharing experience. I understand your frustration. But let's go to Bashona. Good morning, Bashona. Please remember to be brief. I'll give you just 2 minutes to share your experience and also maybe contribute to the topic. And let's stick to the topic. Please do go ahead.
Thank you so much, my sister. Me, I'm from Harare, and I went to verify or inspect my name at Cranboy Boys High, and my name was there, and everything is intact. But I just want to thank you side to bring Professor Jonathan Moyo on this platform. I think Professor, you should open a school of politics in Zimbabwe, so that our political parties and the politicians, they can learn more from this kind of knowledge that Professor has. In actual fact, what Professor did on this platform, especially on Twitter, is actually cleared all the air that you have been seeing a site. I saw you yesterday, site, you posted something to say that there was a low turnout in Bulawayo. And I wanted to pose a question to you as site. What do you think, what was the cause for the low turnout in Bulawayo? And also the question to Professor that I'll lend, my submission is that, Prof, is the ZEC this voter inspection and the time frame which is there, what does the law say? I think it will help to some of us who are grade 2D to understand the law in terms of the inspection period. How is the length, or how many days or how many weeks are they supposed to be, carrying this kind of exercise? Thank you so much, Site, and thank you so much, Professor. I can see Zapu there and Madam Elizabeth. I appreciate for the time that you have given to me. But Prof, please open a school of politics in Zimbabwe so that we can educate our politicians here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bashona, for your contribution this morning. I'll move to Boss Salani. Boss Salani, what has been your experience, or make what are your comments about the anomalies? Please, let's be brief and stick to the topic.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope you can hear me okay. If you could just confirm, host.
Yes, you're clear.
Can you hear me clearly? Fantastic. Right. I want to obviously welcome Professor Jonathan Moyo, and obviously the president of UZA, Elizabeth Valario, and Zapu there. I can also see we've got Charles Matema, who's also the president of the Patriotic Zimbabweans Party. So we have a lot of political players on the space, and I'm sure others were here. Welcome, and it's good to see you. What I'd want is more of these political characters to be on spaces like this, which we do host, and they can take part, because I feel this conversation cannot just be limited to today. We have to have this conversation. Remember, you also are the future leaders of Zimbabweans, not just in Zimbabwe, but elsewhere in the world. And it will better spread your work, your mission, and we can better understand what you're about. Now, going to what has been said. Professor Jonathan Moyo, I know you remember me. I've hosted you before in a space, Citizen Speak Out. And, what I wanted to say to you, I felt like when you were giving your contribution, you were talking about the why, like the what's happening, what are the reasons. You were not answering the question of why this is happening. And I feel this is what happens where you lose us as citizens. Because I was expecting to hear the why answer being responded to, like, why are they anomalies? Let's look at it. I mean, because ZEC has had anomalies from the get-go. From the beginning, there have been problems and issues, and people have raised this. Now we see anomalies where people are literally telling you that last month they checked, they went to their phones, they went online, they saw their names, and all of a sudden, their names have disappeared like a magic trick. Why is that happening? I wasn't hearing a lot of the why answers coming from you. And I have to say, I'm very disappointed, because what that does is, we are allowing ZEC to continue on this stride, this way of being, this way where there's no transparency and accountability. I mean, if ZEC is failing, we need to be honest with it. Let's be frank, so that we can have a system that encourages more people to come and take part in the selection process. Remember, we've got voter apathy. This happens because of these reasons. I mean, let's answer the why. Why can't you find your name? 1 minute, 1 month you see it, the next time you don't, and then you say things like go and check. If a citizen has gone to register in the first place, knowing fully well that ZEC did not help them in any shape or form, and when I'm saying this is because the goalpost continues to be moved forward by ZEC. Before, people didn't have these kind of issues or hoops they needed to clear before they could register. And all of a sudden, ZEC brought this short notice out of the blue and said, you need this, you need that. People like me who are outside of Zimbabwe have literally been working tirelessly to help Zimbabweans on the ground have these documentation, follow these steps so that they could register to vote. And all of a sudden, ZEC decides to move the goalpost one more time and says that, check the anomalies. We should not have these anomalies. Looking at the engagement and the need that citizens are putting into this whole process, wanting to take part, have a voice. Yes, in our elections. Yes, my darling, I'm about to land. Yes, I'm about to land, please. So what we need to answer is the why. Why is it happening? It's happening because all I hear is opposition political parties such as UZA and others are saying this is frustrating the citizens. Why is it happening? For that same reason, to frustrate the citizenry. Why is that happening? Because it's a threat for Zimbabweans to be in a position to vote for change, to vote for something other than ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF is not complaining about these anomalies. You have to ask yourself that crucial question. Why is ZANU-PF the beneficiary of what is happening? Why is that happening? This is a crucial question. And just to land, UZA, Elizabeth, thank you so much for what you're doing. Political parties have to have a register, and I'm glad that you've got that register. But I am appealing to you as our leaders, our politicians, please engage with us outside of these spaces so that we can hear what you're about. Many thanks.
Let's go back to ZAPU spokesperson. So as we wrap up the show, what do you have to say, and what are you going to do now after this conversation?
Thank you once again. To be fair, I'd like to engage on the last speaker who made submissions that maybe the professor did not speak to the why. I think the professor spoke to the why. Maybe the presenter was not yet in the space, because the professor clearly says that what could have caused these anomalies, or in inverted commas, is the delimitation process. And because of the delimitation process, some boundaries could have changed, and therefore names would have moved to other polling stations and such. But that is the technical explanation given by the professor. As ZAPU, again, we do not rule out the possibility of a mischief, the kind of mischief that we have read and appreciated from the professor's Excel Gate book that he wrote. But as ZAPU, we have gained a lot of insight from this space, and we thank you very much. Our next step is to continue urging our members, supporters, and ordinary voters to go and inspect so that we have credible information through which we will then engage all stakeholders with a view of achieving one of two objectives. One, to get an extension. Two, to restart the process and afford our people enough time to inspect and correct and get the legitimate voters' roll. But the most important thing that we must take away here is that the carnage we see, the confusion that we see, is a result of a system and a country failing to work, especially after the so-called Second Republic. Everything in our country is collapsing around us. We have no credible voters' roll. We have no credible currency. The minister is going around shops and tuck shops trying to mitigate a crisis that was building over years. In conclusion, Zimbabweans must continue to register to vote and inspect the voters' roll, and must be prepared to vote and defend the vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sondlo, for that. And let's go to Elizabeth Valerio. What are your closing remarks as UZA?
Thank you very much. So I just want to, reflect on the comments earlier about, the why this is happening. Thank you very much to Bento for those strong remarks and for really pointing that out. And I did understand. I did hear from our colleague at ZAPU who's saying it was explained. I don't believe it was explained sufficiently. When you look at the voters' roll currently, we have residents who live in specific wards, regardless of the fact that we've gone through delimitation. They are in a particular ward. The wards that they're in should still reflect as they were prior to the delimitation process. Because yes, there was a rearrangement of boundaries and certain people were moved. But when you are registered in your ward of residence, you should still reflect in the database under that ward. So I really do want to call into question the credibility of the technical team or whoever is responsible for the database at ZEC. With as much resources as we are putting forward as a nation, they need to be held accountable because at this point, they are reflecting mass incompetence and perhaps intent to cause confusion. I do also want to just highlight a couple of points. We did go to ZEC immediately after we identified a number of discrepancies. Our secretariat has been engaging continuously with ZEC when they're able to reach them. And so far, those issues that we've raised have not been addressed. So it's not a matter of crying foul. We are working actively to try to engage ZEC and to try to hold them accountable and responsible for correct these issues. However, we're not seeing the response. We're not seeing the engagement from the organization. We also, if you look statistically at the number of people on this platform alone who have said they are discrepant, it goes beyond a marginal of issues. 2 people out of 4 on this current platform, and by the way, I'm on my way to go and verify my own registration, have said there were issues, there were discrepancies. This is far too large a statistic when you start to look at the numbers, and the number of people reporting to us indicate that there is a reason to be alarmed about what is happening within ZEC. I also want to call it a recollection of what happened a few months ago, or weeks, I believe, whereby ZANU-PF there were text messages circulating, and these were specifically originating from a political party. We were all surprised, actually, at the level of detail that was included in the SMS messages, and these were messages to citizens purportedly coming from the current president, Mnangagwa, appealing for votes in the forthcoming election. When you see such irregularities, you cannot but start to question these other coinciding issues that are happening and that are relevant to voter data. Is there some sort of a compromise? Do we have integrity in our system? These are the reasons why we are saying ZEC should get their act together and do the right thing so that we don't start questioning these deeper issues. I will also just remind everyone that every other political party that I know of, and some of us are speaking to each other ahead of the elections because we need to strengthen our position ahead of elections. Every other opposition party that I know of has not yet been given a copy of the voters' roll. This is not okay. According to our constitution, we have a right and access to this data, and thus far we've not been given access to it. So I would like to just conclude by calling upon all Zimbabweans to say we cannot explain away these issues. We cannot continue to make excuses for these institutions whose role is to serve us, the citizens of Zimbabwe. We are tired of the excuses. We are now standing up and saying it's your responsibility to do the work. Regardless of the mass confusion, citizens of Zimbabwe should make sure that by all means they are able to vote in this upcoming election. Let's vote out these incompetencies and let's make sure we have leaders that are serving the interests of the citizens. 2023 is our chance to do that. And thank you again to everyone on site. And Zenzele, great to have heard your voice on this platform. I do look forward to further engagements. We stand ready and willing to engage with all citizens in Zimbabwe. We are certainly going to be doing everything we can during this upcoming election to ensure that there is, full engagement of citizens in the upcoming elections. We are taking citizens to the poll stations, trying to ensure that they are fully aware of where they are supposed to vote. I know as we've traveled to rural areas, there's a lot of misinformation currently where voters think that, even if they go into a polling station and they vote, their vote will be known. Know that your vote is confidential and use this platform to raise your voice. Thank you. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you very much, Uza, for that contribution. Thank you so much also for sharing what you're doing on the ground. Let me bring back Prof. As we wrap up the show, Prof, what is your message to everyone who's listening in terms of how important this exercise is?
Thank you very much, Constanza. I should remind everyone of something that you know yourself, that I didn't come here as a speaker or in any representative capacity. I didn't come here to represent anyone. I actually came here to listen. And I found out about the platform, which I know happens every day, but in terms of this topic, 10 minutes before I joined. So people should understand that I'm not here speaking on behalf of anyone. Hello?
Yes, Prof, you are clear. Please, okay.
Okay. I thought I'd lost you. Yeah. Okay. I know we've run out of time, so I'll try and make this really quick. But before my take in terms of the message, I think I get from our discussion and its implication. I should respond to very quickly, I think, two questions in particular. One by Bashona, whose sentiments I appreciate, but he asked me specifically, what does the law say or provide regarding the time that ZEC should avail for the inspection exercise. The relevant law is obviously from the Electoral Act, Section 21 of the Electoral Act deals with the voter inspection, and the phrase used in terms of the time is within a reasonable time. What is a reasonable time? At the very least, because this is not the first election, previous elections should guide us in terms of that was availed. In the discussion, I recalled that for the 2018 harmonized general election, the period given for voter inspection, voters' roll inspection was 10 days. And I would think a reasonable time for something like this, in my view, is 2 weeks. I would think 14 days is a reasonable time, especially when the exercise comes either after the compilation of an entirely new voters' roll, as was the case in 2018, or it comes after a delimitation exercise. Normally, that would be every 10 years. But we have had a major delimitation exercise, the first in 16 years. ZEC should understand that this has a major impact out of the fact that new boundaries are created for constituencies and wards, which impact on the names and location of polling station. So 14 days, Bashona, I would think is the time, but the law says within a reasonable time. And then it's good to hear from Salani. It's true that she provides own platforms, and I remember not too long ago, sometime last year, I did participate in one of, she invited me as a guest in one of the things. But I'm surprised that she and Elizabeth want to give me the responsibility to explain the why. And the why is not a neutral why. The why is, why are people encountering anomalies? It will be absurd to have an answer to the why in advance and say, go and audit, if you are a registered voter, go and audit the provisional voters' roll as per ZEC's invitation, and you are going to find anomalies when you get there. And the reason why you are going to find anomalies is A, B, C, D, etc. I think that's absurd. I have participated in many elections in Zimbabwe. I have studied the elections and published since the 1985 election. And every election is different. Every election has its own dynamics. That's the reason why, after the election, on the basis of the experience of the participants, the candidates, the political parties, the observers, and others who started the elections, we then get to better understand why did things happen this way and that way. We never understand why or start explaining why before the fact, certainly never, and during the fact. We explain after the fact. Now, there are reasonable suppositions. The reason there is an audit or an inspection of a specific kind, as opposed to the one that is continuous. The law says it must and should happen every day. And when the ZEC offices are open, registered voters, in terms of the law, can go on at any day and inspect. But ahead of an election, there's a specific period that ZEC avails for people to audit. What are they auditing? The provisional voters roll meant to be used for the forthcoming election. In this discussion, and I'm very grateful to my colleague from ZAPU, who shared with colleagues on the platform, that in fact, I did say it is reasonable to expect that the delimitation exercise that has created new ward and constituency boundaries would impact on the location and names of polling station. It's a no-brainer. That's a fact. It's a fact that political parties must understand. It's a fact that ZEC must approach the public and registered voters in particular with the awareness of that fact. Should not even hide. They should talk about that fact and use it to encourage just about every registered voter as much as possible to go and check for that reason, that we have changed your boundaries. And this will affect the names and location of your polling station, and you might not find yourself there. However, that in itself would not explain why people are missing on the voters' roll. It will explain why they have been, or why they're not finding their names on the or under the polling stations they either registered in or voted previously. The movement will not explain missing names, but it will explain change the names. We did suggest in the discussion that ZEC appears to have multiple voters rolls. You find it's not on this one, but it's on another one, and you find this after I made the search. I refer, for example, to the experience of Professor Walshman Ngove, who eventually found the name, but was given a funny name. Reason about a frame, a voters within the frame versus the electronic one, which didn't have, but the main frame has it, and so forth. That is one of the reasons that has come up, and that one, which is really the question of multiple voters roll, is a traditional ZEC problem. ZEC has not understood that the consequences, the meaning that an election is a voters roll. And we have been singing this song. It's sung and sung in Excel Gate, but in previous works, Voting for Democracy, and it's like a mantra in electoral practice across the world. It's not Zimbabweans who have discovered that an election is a voters roll. In fact, Zimbabweans haven't quite understood what it means that an election is a voters roll. In particular, ZEC has not understood this. If ZEC needs to understand that it is impossible to be found as an electoral body to have run a free, fair, and credible election if right from the beginning you have not produced a voters roll, if right from the beginning you treat the voters' roll as a secret document or as a national security document, when Section 21 of the Electoral Act says clearly that the voters' roll is a public document. ZEC treats it as a no-go area, a no-touch, a don't touch. And that is when ZEC's problems start, because that is immediately at odds with the law. You can't have the law under which you use to run the elections say a voter's roll is a public document, and you pretend that it is a private document, and you are prepared to go to court challenged by stakeholders who want access to the roll, and you are not giving them the access, and you want to defend why you are not giving them. You want to go to court to explain why you are not making public a document which the law says is public. That is not right, and that is indefensible, and it creates problems. Now, the next thing is, I think this is for Solani. Solani, ZEC invited people you, although you are overseas, but political parties and election observer, and NGOs to be inspection observers. And these are the people, I don't know whether they are there, and if they are there, whether they are at every inspection center. They are the ones who should be observing what's going on and how many people are in fact presenting themselves, the registered voters, to inspect what problems are they encountering, what are the reasons for these problems. Some of us will be keenly awaiting the reports from those observers, and it will be unfortunate if in fact there are no observers. I explained my why. Solani should explain her why without burdening me with the responsibility of explaining why, or without her wanting to ride on my why or on me for that matter. So I think that is it. Finally, the question you asked me, moderator, what message do I have from this? In my view, I have 3 messages. The first one is to registered voters. First, understand that you can and should inspect the voter's roll to find out whether, as a registered voter, your details are captured indeed as per your registration and therefore are correct. The assignment to a polling station is not entirely your responsibility. This is what ZEC does, and they have guidelines for this. They should not create polling stations with more than 1,000 voters. The maximum is 1,000. And if it spills over, they can create a B there or an entirely new polling station somewhere. But it is important for people to know which polling station. And you can know that anytime. And it is a good thing for voters, registered voters, to have the culture of inspecting the voters' roll. I've heard that when some of the people go there, the registered voters, they are asked, "What's your name?" or "Give me your national ID," and then the ZEC officer or official checks for them and then looks at you, your last name, oh, you are not here or you are not there, and gives you back your card. That's not what it should be. And the law is clear. That is not how you inspect the voters' roll. You don't inspect it by presenting your card to the official and asking the official to check your name. You must see a physical copy, or if it's electronic and it's on screen, they must show you. You must see with your own naked eyes that, yes, that's me. These are my details. You are also allowed by the law, as you see, to take whatever notes you want to take. My name is not spelled correctly. Just before my name, I saw Jonathan Moyo's name there, and I didn't know he was from this constituency. So what's going on there? You are free, the law. So my message to the voters is check physically. Don't give that guy. That guy, you can give your ID for him or her to show, to tell that you are fine and you are not mischievous and you are coming for the purpose you say. But if you don't see yourself, you have not inspected the voters roll at all. That's to the registered voters inspecting the provisional voters roll. Then to the stakeholders, my message is, clearly there's a problem. You never solve a problem by shouting at the people you think are causing the problem. You solve a problem by engaging them. This gallery politics benefits no one, not even those who are indulging in it. This process is a ZEC process, and if you are a stakeholder, engage ZEC. But you can't engage ZEC just on the basis of your own individual experience. Oh, I've checked 265, I'm not there, hey, what, Instagram politics, it serves absolutely no use if you are a stakeholder. You should engage on the basis of credible information affecting your members, using knowledgeable ways of getting that information, and then engage ZEC and so forth. I myself get very frustrated when I see stakeholders who don't understand that praxis means make things happen. It does not mean make noise, you know. And when you make things happen, those things speak for themselves, especially in a public matter such as inspecting a voter's roll. So my message to the stakeholders, be they political parties or NGOs, is take responsibility. After all, if you are a political party,
Prof, we have lost you there. You muted your mic. Please unmute your mic and go
sorry,
on.
sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, it's one thing to say, ZEC give me a voter's roll, and then there's a squabble and you end up in court. And quite another thing to go to a ZEC office, registration office or inspection office, and say, I've come to inspect your copy of the voter's roll. I've not come to take your copy. I've come to check my name. I'm not aware of people previously reporting that they went to, I'm not aware of reports of people saying they went to a ZEC inspection office, or there were no inspection offices as such, registration centers, to check whether I'm on the copy that they have there, and they told me to go away. I'm not aware of such incident, but I'm aware of people, stakeholders, saying they wanted a copy to take home, and they were told, sorry, we don't have, or it will take a whole year to print a national one, blah, 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 blah. So stakeholders must take responsibility to make things happen, rather than to make noise for the sake of making noise and thinking, oh, now, since I don't have a manifesto, let me see if I can pull a fast one here and make this an election manifesto, and so forth and so forth. I had a colleague, I think it was in Gabulo, saying, why are you talking about people making noise on Twitter and so forth? Well, it is something observable and something that lends itself to a national talking point when leaders of political parties think that it's best to make noise on Twitter than to collect information and engage ZEC about correcting the anomalies. It's a national talking point. And I was making that point partly to say to colleagues, and in this case, particularly to Solani, it's false. You should not believe your own falsehood. You can't come here and tell us that ZANU-PF people are not complaining about the provision of voters' roll because either they are not finding their names or they have been assigned to different polling stations which are 8 or more kilometers away from where or near where they live and so forth. That is poor politics, because it's a blatant lie. They are actually complaining, but you should know how they complain. They don't complain to ZEC. They complain to leaders of their party. They have their chair people and so forth. They go there and say, Tina, Asiko, and in any case, when they go to check these things, when they inspect, they don't just put their hands in their pocket and start whistling, walking to a polling station alone. They go in an organized way with their structures. And when they get there, they check. And already, if there are problems, the chair of that structure is on top of the situation. He goes and reports, and then they inform institutionally. Quite frankly, the difference between individuals and political parties is that political parties have structures and use structures to engage within themselves, and others they need to engage whether they are government. That's the point. But for you to come here and excite yourself and you think you are telling the truth by saying, oh no, like Solano, you are saying, no, I'm sorry, my dear friend. That's not true. It's a blatant lie and it doesn't help anyone. ZEC is my last point. One of the reasons we are having this conversation and so forth is clearly because ZEC does not get it. ZEC doesn't, it ends up making us engage in this acrimonious stuff and so forth, when in fact, ZEC should play by the book. ZEC as a Chapter 12 institution is not supposed to be under the direction or authority of anyone else. Because the Constitution has given you that power. Don't pretend that there's someone who's directing you. Come out openly like a tractor's driver so that you can be seen from far that is you. And the same Constitution which says you should not be under the authority or direction of anyone says you must be transparent. You are required, ZEC, to be transparent by law. So that when you are doing good things, it should not be you to bother telling anyone. It should be seen that you are doing good things, and then people will acknowledge that is good. We saw you yesterday. Fantastic, fantastic. And when you misstep or do bad, the fact that the law says you must be transparent and you are transparent means the public, the voters, registered and active, will see. They must see. You can't be hiding there. Now, ZEC hides because the birth of ZEC was very problematic. ZEC is not a fully fledged institution with all the required competencies that people can see. It outsources a lot of competencies because it doesn't have them resident within itself. So it has to rely on seconded staff. If it needs a statistician, it must go to the University of Zimbabwe mathematics department or somewhere and say, hey, we need this, we need that. And that is really difficult because some of the people whose services it has to source don't want to listen to ZEC. They tell them, if you don't work, and I'm singing in this news, and you can't be using statutes all the time to say, but the law says we can ask for anyone we want. No. So there's a problem there that when it comes to technical things, the technical staff at ZEC, which must do these things, is invisible when it shouldn't. When people ask technical questions, those guys there, the commissioners, don't have the technical answers, and they are not normally expected to have them. It not be a strategic, ambiguous thing for us to know who is the IT person of ZEC, who's responsible for this, who can explain where is the electronic voters roll and why is it missing these things. So that's the first problem. ZEC must be transparent, not because people are demanding it to be transparent, but because the Constitution requires it. Then, lastly, ZEC must be efficient. The Constitution says it must run its affairs, run elections efficiently. But so far, and I have absolutely no axe to grind against ZEC, but ZEC has failed the test of independence, in the sense that the Constitution says don't get direction from anywhere. ZEC behaves as if it's being directed from somewhere. Whether it is or not, we don't know. But what we know is it is not behaving as if it is independent. Then the test of transparency, ZEC plays hide and seek. It is not a see-through institution. The Constitution requires it to be see-through, but it is not. Then the question of competence. A lot of things, when we say an election is a voter's roll, we must also say the voter's roll is both a political and a technical document. ZEC allows politics to take over, when in fact this is a technical document and it should be settled on technical grounds. And the reason is because we don't know and we don't see its technical people. And then it causes all this. So finally, my message to ZEC is, ZEC, given the background that we all know, this is very important what you are going through, or you have provided for voters, registered voters to do, namely to inspect the provisional voters roll. You have not even told them that they are inspecting a provisional voters roll. You are making it like, oh, they are inspecting a voters roll. What kind of a voters roll? We know that you are going to close the voters roll for purposes of the forthcoming election due in August, 2 days after the gazetting of election proclamation. So it's about to be closed. People are now still registering. And these people are still registering up to 2 days from the date of the gazetting of the election. We'll need to inspect the voters roll to see whether they're still there. After that, you have to produce a final voters roll that will be used for the election. You need to tell people that for purposes of the election, the real voters roll, because you have a ward voters roll, a constituency voters roll, a national voters roll, and a polling station voters roll. You have those 4 voters roll. ZEC, you need to tell people that the most important voters roll for purposes of voting in the forthcoming election in August is the polling station voters roll. That's the important one. That's the only one that will be used. There is no other voters roll that is used on election day except the polling station voters roll. Tell them to inspect that one. And people should understand it's easy to inspect that one because you'll be inspecting one where you are 1 out of no more than 1,000 people. Tell the people that ZEC. But for you to have the confidence, electoral confidence, and electorate confidence, please do the best you can in terms of the law to be transparent and efficient in the preparation of the provisional voters roll. And the preparation of the provisional voters roll, if done transparently, efficiently, will gain you support and confidence of the registered voters. If registered voters are happy about the provisional voters roll, they will go into the election with the final voters roll with the necessary confidence you expect, ZEC. And I don't understand why any organization that has constitutional power would find this difficult. Consequently, because there's been a false start, and part of it, out of genuine reasons, which you, ZEC, have reported, to say at a number of centers, there have been technical challenges and challenges of a logistic nature, which we have not specified, but which you have confirmed. Honestly, be transparent about the implications of that, and don't extend as you have done by a day. You extended last night when many people were already sleeping. Extend in the morning and give a reasonable extension, not just 1 day. There's no reason why anyone should believe that the problems which you, ZEC, have said you have encountered, let alone the anomalies which some high-profile individuals have reported, justify an extension. Those, especially your own identification. So why can't you just say we extend by a number of days. 1 day is completely unreasonable, but several days, or even the initial intended 5 days. Now everyone is ready. Why can't you just do a restart? And since it's not you transporting people to come to the inspection centers, there's no cost to you. You just have to have your officers there. There's a cost to the public to transport itself to the voting, inspection centers. So I would urge ZEC to rethink either the extension or even, for purposes of good faith, a restart. Both start with the letter R. Restart, redo, if you up to it. But if you're not, leave redoing or restarting, extend by another day. And for me, those are the separate things to the registered voter, to the stakeholders, and to ZEC. But to all of them, I honestly think that it is not in the national interest for registered voters, stakeholders in the election, and the ZEC to be fighting at every turn or every point, especially the starting point. I don't think it's in the national interest. I think what is in the national interest is for these three players to identify a common purpose, engage with that in mind. And if people are going to quibble, let's quibble after the elections if there's improper counting, what. But honestly, to quibble and fight over inspection doesn't give a good account of ourselves as a nation, so to speak. That's my take,
so much, Prof, for your contribution this morning. We've learned a lot today, and I'm sure everyone else feels the same about what we have learned today. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Valerio and Sondlovu, for joining us this morning and sharing your position as politicians. Thank you so much for everyone who listened in on the show. It was quite insightful for me, and I hope that we are all going to stand up, go and inspect the voters' roll, encourage others to also go and inspect the voters' roll, and maybe, act on the anomalies in a rational manner, like Professor encouraged.
Well, yeah, that was insightful. I'm off to go and look for my name in the voters' roll until I find it. So I know I'll end up at the ZEC office again today. Yeah.
Otherwise, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Don't forget to follow us at ZECW, that is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more of our programs. And also join us every weekday mornings from 8:30 to 9:30 to discuss more on our elections and everything else that is happening in our politics. Otherwise, from myself, Nonhlanhla Mabiwa, Zenzele Ndebele, and Brighton Ngube in absentia, it's bye for now.
Confirmed. Honestly, be transparent about the implications of that, and don't extend as you have done by a day. You extended last night when many people were already sleeping. Extend in the morning and give a reasonable extension, not just 1 day. There's no reason why anyone should believe that the problems which you, ZEC, have said you have encountered, let alone the anomalies which some high-profile individuals have reported, justify an extension. Those, especially your own identification. So why can't you just say we extend by a number of days? 1 day is completely unreasonable, but several days, or even the initial intended 5 days. Now everyone is ready. Why can't you just do a restart? And since it's not you transporting people to come to the inspection centers, there's no cost to you. You just have to have your officers there. There's a cost to the public to transport itself to the voting, inspection centers. So I would urge ZEC to rethink either the extension or even for purposes of good faith, a restart. Both start with the letter R. Restart, redo, if you up to it. But if you are not, leave redoing or restarting extend by another day. And for me, those are the separate things to the registered voter, to the stakeholders, and to ZEC. But to all of them, I honestly think that it is not in the national interest for registered voters, stakeholders in the election, and the ZEC to be fighting at every turn or every point, especially the starting point. I don't think it's in the national interest. I think what is in the national interest is for these three players to identify a common purpose, engage with that in mind. And if people are going to quibble, let's quibble after the elections if there's improper counting, what. But honestly, to quibble and fight over inspection doesn't give a good account of ourselves as a nation, so to speak. That's my take, Nanshan.
So much, Prof, for your contribution this morning. We've learned a lot today, and I'm sure,
so to speak.